What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about a debate that happened last week in Canada. And I'm a little surprised that I didn't hear more about this. This is an important debate, right? Between the different Canadian party leaders. This is the last one before the Canadian election, right? So, I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't think this really got a lot of attention or news coverage here in the United States. I didn't see much about it, but then again, it's not like this is a big deal or anything. It's not a big deal. We're just choosing who's going to become the next prime minister of Canada, determining the fate of 40 million Canadians, which will have huge repercussions on the rest of the world for years to come. Not that big a deal. I guess this is worth looking at for a second. So, joking aside, especially with the Canadian election coming up, I can't believe how fast that's come. I mean, it says these are the 6 big moments and takeaways from the final leaders' debate. I think the debate, it looked like it was like 2 hours long or something, so I'm going to take a look at some of the highlights. In true American fashion. My attention span is only so big. I gotta look at the highlights, the big moments, the big points here, or at least so I can get a grasp on what's sort of happening with the Canadian election and this debate. It says polls for the April 28th federal election open for 4 days over the long weekend. Polls open? Is what? Wait, the election is on the 28th, right? No, that hasn't happened yet. It's like when you wake up and your alarm didn't go off and you think you missed work or something. You're like, what? The election was yesterday. It's like, okay, no. What is this saying? Oh, do you guys do like polls are open? Maybe you do early voting. Do you guys do that? The mail-in voting, the early voting? That's a big thing here in America now. Maybe you do that in Canada. But the actual election day is April 28th. All right, I think I understand that. Crisis averted. I want to take a look at this video. It says, basically, the federal leaders' debate summarized in 6 minutes. So great.
Here's what you might have missed from the federal leaders' English debate. Let's get into it. 4
Okay.
leaders share the stage for the final time on Thursday night. This comes just as Canadians are about to cast their vote, with advanced polling opening as early as this weekend. Liberal leader Mark Carney was the target for much of the debate.
You supported blocking pipelines in Canada that gave Donald Trump and the U.S. a near monopoly over our energy.
My record is
Interesting. So, my understanding of Canadian politics is it's better than what it was. That's for sure. And it's definitely got to be better than a lot of other Americans who, gosh, I think if you asked a lot of Americans, most of us wouldn't even be able to know that there's a Canadian federal election happening, if that tells you anything about how much Americans care about news outside of the United States. Not very much. I'm sure on April 28th it will make headlines in the United States on the news channels, whoever won. I'm sure that will make the news. But for right now, I don't think a lot of Americans know that all of this is happening. So we got Mark Carney. He's the target, they're saying. Makes sense. He is the current Prime Minister of Canada. And I guess Canada is kind of deciding if you want to keep Mark Carney or if you want something totally different. Pierre Poilievre. I know how to pronounce this stuff sometimes. Pierre Poilievre. Or if you want to take Canada in a totally different direction, Pierre Poilievre. Maybe you like how it is now, Mark Carney. There's a couple of other Canadian political parties. It feels like, to me, those parties are so small, they don't really have a chance to win, to become the prime minister, right? Am I understanding that correctly? I think I do. Anyway, so it's kind of an interesting sort of what's happening in Canada, where you've had Trudeau step down and Mark Carney step in as the Liberal leader, Prime Minister. So you guys have had like a few weeks of Mark Carney, and you get to see what that's all about. And he almost gets this chance to prove that he can, hold the position of Prime Minister and run the government and the offices. And that's got to be an advantage for him, that he's had this opportunity, this window to kind of prove himself a little bit. So Canadians, you kind of know what you're getting with Mark Carney. You never know in the future what will happen, but you have a taste of it. Little wine tasting, if you will, of Mark Carney. And you're like, okay, that's good. That sounds all right. But maybe you want to change it up with something completely different. That would be Pierre Poilievre. And what he's got going against him is that you don't exactly know what it will look like when he's the prime minister, because Mark Carney is the prime minister. But I'm sure Pierre has explained all the things he's going to do. Anyway, that's kind of how I see it, as an American, kind of from the outside looking in.
Pipelines in Canada that gave Donald Trump and the U.S. a near monopoly over our energy.
My record is a month long as Prime Minister.
Mr. Carney, you had time, as you mentioned, not very long time, but as Prime Minister, you showed us your priorities. The first thing you did, you made a tax cut for millionaires, which was reversing on the capital gains.
You are becoming a real Canadian leader, saying one thing in French and another one in English.
Okay. Right, the Bloc Québécois. That's a thing. That's amazing that they all speak French and English and the bilingual. So that's amazing, by the way. Anyway.
This continued for 90 minutes into the event, with other leaders peppering Carney during a round when they could ask one question to any opponent.
So the theme of the night was the other three party leaders questioning Mark Carney. I guess that makes sense, because Carney is the current prime minister, and that's kind of the person they have to beat. And again, I'm a little confused, because it's like, from what I understand, isn't Pierre Poilievre really the only real competition to actually winning the office of prime minister? Or am I misunderstanding that? I don't know.
Mr. Singh, you have the first option here. Who do you want to ask your question of?
Mr. Carney.
I want to know, will you, before the election, reveal all the details of your assets?
Carney joked that he would use his time to ask himself a question, but ended up using it on Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
So everyone's asking Carney. This reminds me of American politics, where there's a lot of little facts that are brought up, like, oh, Carney, you helped millionaires and you hurt Canadian pipelines. And it's like, you don't have time. Well, I guess you do have time, but in the moment, if you're just watching as a viewer, and you're just tuning in for this, it's like, oh, is that true? Did he really do that? Or is that an exaggeration? Or wow. And you just have to make all this really big decisions based on just things people say on a stage, and you're never quite sure what's true and what's not, and what's embellished or not. But I have to say, overall, just from the minutes that I've seen of this Canadian debate, this seems much more cordial, much more professional than the American debates. Like, especially our presidential debates in recent history have just been crazy. Like, it's nice to see that in Canada, even though I'm sure you guys have your political differences and different beliefs, and you guys can still get up on a stage and talk normally and respectfully to each other. I don't know who I'm thinking of right now. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure why I think of this right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats.
Oh.
They're eating the pets.
Oh, wait a second. This isn't right. That's not the right one. This is the right one.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Eat the cat. Eat the cat. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. Eat the cat.
Eat the cats. Okay, that's That's American. That's American debates. So going from that to this, it's like a big fresh breath of air. Anyway, let's keep going.
Of questioning about his lack of security clearance while serving as opposition leader.
I'm going to ask a question of Mr. Poilievre. Why not?
Former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also came up several times.
Mr. Carney, Justin Trudeau's staffers are actually here with you at this debate in Montreal, writing the talking points that you are regurgitating into the microphone. How can we possibly believe that
That's
you are
painful.
any
Oh, wow. That's
different
painful.
than the
Okay.
previous 10 years of Liberal
25
government?
I do my own talking points. Thank you very much. I know
So, okay. It's interesting seeing it's actually really interesting and refreshing to see like how Canadians do this. And there's similarities and differences between American and Canadian politics, but it's like, what are the criticisms that Poilievre has against Carney and Carney against Poilievre? Because that's kind of what's going to decide all this, I'm guessing. And it seems like a big strategy for Pierre Poilievre is to make the Mark Carney, Justin Trudeau comparison, where it's like, oh, more Mark Carney is more Justin Trudeau. And people didn't like Justin Trudeau, especially at the end. I mean, the guy resigned. He stepped down from being prime minister. He willingly quit being prime minister because he was so unpopular, right? So this is a good strategy. I totally understand what he's doing. I think the comparison Mark Carney is going to use is probably, well, Pierre Poilievre is like Donald Trump. And that, I think, has been probably more powerful than the Carney-Trudeau comparison.
you want to be running against Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau isn't here.
There was way more crosstalk in the French debate on Wednesday.
Conservatives have a plan for change. And that plan
plan
includes
voted
cutting
against every measure to help people out.
Cutting income taxes. Because
How much
hard
do you think
work
childcare
is
costs?
actually being
Dental care
punished.
costs. You want to save people $2,000, but cut their dental care,
That's
which
false.
is thousands of dollars.
False.
Cut their child care, which is thousands of dollars. Cut pharmacare coverage, which is thousands of dollars.
False.
That's not a very good math deal right there.
The debate also
Oh my God. Now that... I don't think I've ever seen it quite like that, where Poilievre is trying to be the fact checker. He's like, false, 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 false. That's a strategy too. So in the Canadian debate here, it's always kind of hairy. You're allowed to talk while someone else is talking within reason. And it's like, it is a debate. Like, you're supposed to be sparring vocally with words. So I think that's all fine within reason.
addressed the Republican elephant in the room, Canada's relationship with the United States. And leaders mostly repeated their talking points from the last few weeks.
90% of guns that come into that are used in crime are smuggled illegally over the porous, liberal-run borders.
The border
and that's
that you
why
cut
the police.
border officers.
That's not true, and that's
You
why
literally
the police.
Wow. Is that true, by the way? All the guns, like the majority of guns in Canada are because they're illegally brought in from the United States? I'd be willing to believe that. That's... Talk about something we do not talk about here in America. I didn't even know that. Makes sense to me. We got plenty of guns. You want some guns? We got we got guns for you. No problem. Also, it's interesting to see how America plays a role in Canadian politics, and that, like, how are we going to deal with the United States problem is like an actual important discussion like the Canadians have in politics. That's both fascinating for me to see and horrifying for me to see. Like, to see the United States, that's how we're talked about now with other countries. Other countries are like, all right, we got to vote in somebody who's gonna, do a good job at handling the U.S. and how annoying and bad they've been. Like, yeah, that's embarrassing for a lot. Should be for a lot of Americans. Certainly for me.
Each leader also got to say what they thought was Canada's biggest security threat.
The physical security threat to our country is the rampant crime wave that is running out of control.
I think the biggest security.
Is there a rampant crime wave in Canada? Rampant crime wave? That's a little vague. What exactly are we talking about? What's all these criminals and rampant criminals? And I haven't heard about this.
Security threat to China, Canada is China.
Mr. Singh.
Biggest security
China.
threat.
China. Biggest security threat to Canada is China? I mean, that's kind of why did I say that like Donald Trump? China? It's China. They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. They're eating somehow that got to me. I got Trump on the brain. Anyway, they're what are we talking about? China. In the United States, that's a big talking point. How, security concerns with China spying on your phones and TikTok being owned by China and all these different things. So I didn't know that was a thing that Canadians agreed with as well.
Illegal guns and drugs coming across the border and cuts to services that would make our public safety and security even worse.
The fact that neither Quebec or Canada is able to protect itself and that we are still dependent and entirely dependent on Americans to protect us.
He also spoke about Arctic sovereignty, with many of the leaders talking about the need to build up Canada's military in the north.
Because the Russians want to make incursions into our waters.
And how Canada needs to step up its...
That's there's a lot of talking points here that I kind of expected, like the Canada-America relationship. And then there's a lot of little things I didn't know were a part of Canadian politics. I think that's why this is so interesting to me. Like the security of northern Canada, the Arctic. I know there's passageways there for ships and stuff, and I guess Russia wants some of that, and that would be a massive security concern, yes.
role to address violence in Ukraine and the Middle East.
We must help Ukraine, but we also must help the civilians of Gaza, and we must destroy Hamas, which is a terrorist organization.
People in Israel and in Palestine deserve to live in peace and security. And Mr. Carney, to date, you've not acknowledged that what's going on in Gaza is now clearly become a genocide. It's important to call things out as they are, and you've not done that.
Yes, two-state solution, but it has to be a viable and free Palestinian state. Mr. Poilievre.
This is another huge point of contention in the United States. Israel, Palestine, Gaza, all this stuff. That stuff is still going on, by the way. Trump said he was going to end that war on day one. Or was that Ukraine, Russia? Or was that supposed to end on day one? Either way. Still going on, by the way. And I know this is a very hairy talking point where politicians from the U.S., Canadian politicians, Mark Carney, whoever, all have try to be so careful about how they talk about this.
Have rightly mentioned Iran, the Iranian sponsors in this region. We have to be clear-eyed about the fundamental risks of Iran.
My answer is that we should continue to support Ukraine. We don't need to follow the Americans in everything they do. When they're wrong, then we will stand on our own and with other allies.
Public safety and security came up under the lens of the Notwithstanding Clause. That's a section under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Poilievre said he would use it to get tougher on repeat criminal offenders if he becomes Prime Minister.
We will use it to protect the charter rights of law-abiding Canadians. I'm interested in the rights of victims. Mr. Carney seems to be very interested in the rights of criminals.
But some leaders thought that would lead to another danger.
Interesting. Yeah. So I'm trying to get a better idea of what the big differences between Poilievre and Carney are. And this video is kind of helping with that, although it's tough because it says Pierre Poilievre is going to be tough on crime, tough on repeat criminals. That's all great. But it's sure, Mark Carney has been soft on criminals. Is that true? Because, that's typically not a good thing to be soft on crime. Crime is bad. I think that's something people can agree on. How you go about all that, maybe you can debate, but it's I assume Mark Carney wants to, criminalize criminals, and so does Pierre Poilievre. So it's that's a tough one for me to really understand what the difference in their positions are.
I think it's a very dangerous slope to override judgments of the Supreme Court of Canada.
Let's not let Mr. Poilievre
Okay.
get away with making this ludicrous claim that anyone on this stage thinks that violent crime should get a less severe penalty.
They also
Yeah, that's what I thought too. It's like, surely everybody thinks that.
talked about the dangers of climate change and how that could impact Canada's energy sector. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet didn't mince words about his party's stance on an east to west pipeline.
I'm sorry to crash your party, guys, but you are telling fairy tales. Clean oil and gas is a fairy tale.
When I was
I like that. I like that guy. It's a fairy tale. That's a good way to put it, I guess. I'm not exactly sure what he's talking about. I just think it's funny how he decided to eloquently say that.
born and when I was growing up in Edmonton, early days, it was a fairy tale, quote unquote. But you know what happened? Canadian ingenuity.
We do support protecting the environment. We want to ban the dumping of raw sewage into our waters. We want to hold large corporations to high environmental standards to protect our water and air.
Carney did have some trouble recollecting one thing. The Liberal leader repeatedly mixed up the names of two major pipeline projects, Keystone and Trans Mountain.
Keystone, which is the pipeline which has helped to increase oil and gas oil exports rather by 50% in this country, that is an asset of the people of Canada. We own it.
So that's actually the Trans Mountain pipeline. That extension
Oh, not a good look. Stuff like that's bound to happen. Not a good look. Really, that was an opportunity for one of the other leaders to jump in and be like, he got the pipelines wrong. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He can't be prime minister. He doesn't know the pipelines. You know, that was their chance to jump in, and it sounds like they didn't really, so no one really cared, and he probably just got them mixed up, but you know.
was done in 2024. The federal government bought the project back in 2018 for $4.5 billion to get it over the finish line, but the total cost ended up ballooning to $34 billion. Now, another notable moment from the English debate was one that never really happened. Remember those official post-debate interviews with the leaders in French? Well, they got canceled this time around. The NDP hosted their own news conference, but the others opted out. Right-wing news outlets like Rebel News dominated the night before after they won a court battle to get increased accreditation. Debate organizers said the move was because they couldn't guarantee or promise a proper space where reporters could ask leaders their questions.
They couldn't guarantee a proper space at what? At the Canadian federal leaders debate, you couldn't find a spot to do some interviews? What? Huh? All right. Let's just take a look at some of the takeaways here before wrapping this up. This has been good. It's really interesting to see these Canadian debates, and they actually have like, I can't say this enough. It's refreshing to see like actual normal humans talking and arguing in a cohesive manner that's respectful. You can understand it. That's very refreshing, by the way. Very refreshing to see.
Cat, eat the cat. They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs. Eat the cat. Eat the
What else do we have here? I think I'm going to scroll down to the bottom because there's a closing statements, I want to say. Here we go. Main party leaders deliver their pitch. Here we go. This is good.
Because you voted for New Democrats, we were able to build this country that we love. Universal health care and pensions, because you voted for us. Because you voted for New Democrats, we were able to fight to bring in dental care, pharmacare, and childcare. Because you voted for us, because you supported us. You have the power with your vote to send more New Democrats to Ottawa, to continue that fight, to make sure that no government cuts the things that we hold dear, like our health care, to ensure that we can do everything possible to make life more affordable by making it more affordable to buy your groceries and to get a home.
He's very well spoken. I'm not exactly sure who this is. It's the leader of the NDP, I believe. Well spoken. A lot of nice points. Some of this stuff reminds me of the American politics that we had in our election, where it's like, it almost annoys me at this point when politicians are like, we're gonna bring your grocery prices down. It's like, how? All right, do it. What are you gonna do? What? That's all you're gonna say about it? You're gonna bring them down. How? Like, explain. What? Because it just comes across as like empty, like talking points. It's just like, okay, make sure to say this one. Like, yeah, we'll bring your prices down, and you're gonna be happier, and this and that. Yeah. Not that he's necessarily doing that. Maybe he does know how to bring prices down, but I don't know. I think I'm a little scarred from our last election, where there was a lot of promises on both sides of that kind of stuff.
I'm asking for your support in this election so that I can continue to fight to defend the things that make Canada, Canada, the things that we hold dear.
And I guess they have to do this because it's their closing statement. They don't have all day to talk, but it's like, I'm going to do the things that make Canada, Canada. It's like, what the hell does that mean? Maybe that does mean something to Canadians. Maybe I'm being too harsh here. It's nothing against him personally. It's just like, I'm getting flashbacks to American politics.
The things that make us proud to be Canadian.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Mr. Carty.
We are facing the biggest crisis of our lifetimes. Donald Trump is trying to fundamentally change the world economy, the trading system. But really what he's trying to do to Canada, he's trying to break us so the U.S. can own us.
This is this is probably a better closing statement. The first guy, the NDP leader, that was like a little vague and a little like, vote for me because I'm going to be good. This is more specific. It's also hitting on like a bit like, would you say the Canada-US relationship is one of the main issues for this election? Would that be fair to say? So he's talking about one of the main issues. One of the issues I know a lot of Canadians have a lot of anxiety and nervousness around, and just like anger around. And so I think it's very smart of him to be talking about this, to choose to talk about this in his closing statements.
They want our land, they want our resources, they want our water, they want our country. We're all going to stand up against Donald Trump. I'm ready. I've managed crises over the years. I've built strong economies.
Wow. See, I think this is actually much better. Like, this is well done. I'm not giving my endorsement for any party leader here, by the way. I'm just really just reacting to what they're saying. And, this is Canadian politics, so I don't know all that much about it. But what he's saying here, the way he's saying it, he's literally saying, I've handled these sorts of situations. I know what to do. I know what the problems are. I know the solutions. And I know this is the thing you guys are worried about. I think that is so much more powerful.
We will fight back.
Unfortunately, it all happens to be like us, the United States, that they're talking about. But that's, I hate to hear that. But anyway.
With counter tariffs. We will protect our workers and those businesses, and we will build the strongest economy. We will build Canada strong. I'm asking for your support, the honor of doing so. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Carney. Monsieur Blanchet.
For 260 years and a little bit more, les Français, devenus des Canadiens, devenus des Canadiens français, devenus des Québécois, you have tried to have them become Canadians like all Canadians. But to no avail, we are different. So let's be economic partners.
Oh. I don't know. He's really not talking about anything that has to do with, I don't know, the hot topics. Maybe this is a hot topic in Canada. He's choosing to use his time to say, let's not forget, French Canadians are very different, and you can't make French Canadians like the rest of Canada, because I understand it is a different culture, different language, a different, Quebec, haven't you tried to secede from Canada twice, voted to become independent? So is that just mostly what this party is based on?
Let's have a voice chosen by and for Quebecers, an ally for Canadians as equals in front of Mr. Trump.
Monsieur Poiliev.
Okay.
Only in Canada could someone start where I began and get to this stage. I was born to a single mother and adopted by school teachers who raised me to believe in the incredible Canadian promise that anyone who worked hard could do anything.
Interesting. I see. Okay, so he's going for the I come from humble beginnings. I'm just like you. All of these closing statements are clearly memorized. But I have to say, for Pierre, this closing statement, to me, this came across as really memorized, like he's just repeating something that he planned out. Not that his story is bad, you know, being like a humble Canadian from honest beginnings, maybe the next prime minister. That's a great story, but it's like, I don't know, maybe he has to work on his acting or something.
Could someone start where I began and get to this stage? I was born to a single mother and adopted by school teachers who raised me to believe in the incredible Canadian promise that anyone who worked hard could do anything.
That's good.
That promise feels broken today.
Okay.
Many of you worried about paying your bills, feeding your families, or ever even owning a home. You're worried your kids are in danger. But I'm here to say it doesn't have to be this way.
All right, so basically what this boils down to is Pierre Poilievre is focusing on like a basket of issues, mostly like Canadians hurting financially, trying to buy a home, trying to survive, trying to find happiness as a Canadian. Mark Carney went for a very specific, almost sort of fear-mongering sort of like, we're under attack by the United States, and if you elect me, we're going to be okay. And Pierre is more this like, let's make it the good old days.
With change, we can restore the Canadian promise so that hard work gets you a beautiful house on a safe street under a proud flag. We can do it with hope for a change.
Okay. Very interesting. Very, very, is that about it? Yeah, that's about it. We've been at this for a while. I'm just trying to soak it all in. I got a lot out of this. I think most Americans have no idea, not a clue, what's happening in Canadian politics. And I feel like after this, I have, you know, not a total idea, but a more complete idea, a better understanding of what's happening and what this election means, and your options with the four different leaders and what they stand for. So yeah, I thought this was great. This was really interesting. And I'm glad I took a look at this. So anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on, I don't know, the Canadian leaders debate, the upcoming election. That'd be really awesome to hear about from Canadians out there. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canada and learning about Canadian culture and seeing Canadian things I've never seen before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.